So for any of you who might be joining for the first time today, we usually start these by, kind of level setting with our methodology for these reports, because you will see in the webinar session today a lot of graphs and numbers. And all of those graphs and numbers that you'll be seeing, they are pulled from our incident response engagement. So as I mentioned, that's something that my team specifically supports. And we also support the data analysis. So kind of looking across those cases to see if there's any insights we can draw on emerging threats or trends. Now, what we do with that data, because obviously that's one piece of the puzzle, right, when it comes to the threat landscape. Now, George's team, they also have insight into what Kroll sees on the managed services side. So this would be, attempted compromises that our SOC teams may be observing. So we overlay the data that we have from our IR practice, and based on what we're seeing in managed services and then what we're seeing in the wider landscape, either from other security researcher reporting or on the dark web, we kind of reach these themes that we cover for a quarterly each time. So that just, as I said, that just kind of sets the landscape for what will, or the methodology for what we'll be covering today. So if we get into our first section here, we're really focused on, looking at the Q3 2024. One of the things that we saw that really bubbled up, and first we were seeing it kind of just open source anecdotally in some of the cases that we were seeing and some of the research that we were reading, but then we actually saw it bear out in the cases that came into us during the third quarter. And this was an increase in activity of threat actors targeting the tech and telecom sector. So you can see here, this chart, this actually looks at our top 5 sectors that we observed during the third quarter. Professional services, if you've been on these calls before, professional services is usually one of the most targeted sectors that we see in our casework, followed by manufacturing. Manufacturing, again, one of the top sectors, particularly when it comes to ransomware. And then after that, we have financial services. Also, this year we've been seeing a lot of retail and restaurant. And then tech and telecom. Now, last time they didn't make the top 5 sectors for our cases, but this time they did, and you can see there was quite a jump from the previous quarter. And when we looked at, the cases involving the tech sector, a lot of what we were seeing at Kroll was related to insider threat as well as email compromise. Now, if we look at the next slide here in the presentation, you can kind of see the increase that we've observed over time. So it's been kind of like a, quarter over quarter increase since last year at this time. We had a little bit of downturn in Q2 and then a big jump in Q3 this year. So if we go over to our next slide here, I want to talk a little bit more. As I mentioned, I already kind of mentioned some of the threat incident types that we at Kroll were observing with the tech and telecom sector. A lot of this was around insider threat and email compromise, but we also see with the sector a lot of ransomware activity as well as unauthorized access. And, we always spend a lot of time in these sessions talking about ransomware. And one of the reasons for that is because of the high impact of a ransomware event that it has on an organization.